The drug lord was known to have hidden piles of money and drugs at his various homes around the world.
From Pablo Escobar's multi-million-dollar mansions now lying in ruins, to the abandoned John Gotti mansion frozen in time, criminal bosses own some of the creepiest abandoned mansions around the world. What happens to the sprawling estates of billionaire kingpins once they're caught or killed? Gear up for a wild adventure as we take you inside the abandoned, luxurious mansions of Mafia dons and drug lords. Escobar's secret mansion. Far out into the Caribbean Sea lies an island known as La Isla Grande, home to the palatial mansion of the cocaine king himself, the El Patron Pablo Escobar. This sprawling complex of ultra-luxurious buildings used to be a hub of activities back in Escobar's glory days, but now all that's left is a shadow of what the structure once was. Back when Escobar was king over Colombia and head of the deadly Medellin drug cartel, he held a near monopoly on the distribution of cocaine, smuggling around 80% of the entire supply that makes its way into the United States. Thanks to this string of successful smuggling operations and his history of violent crimes, Escobar was able to amass a net worth of over $30 billion, making him one of the richest men of his time. With so much money at his disposal, Escobar built a paradise meant to serve as a haven of safety and comfort for his family and friends, as well as a secure base of operation for his criminal activities. This elaborate structure features a mansion, a palm court centered around a massive swimming pool, and even a landing pad for his helicopters. No expense was spared in the design and construction of this paradise island, with over 300 rooms serving Escobar's endless stream of guests, business partners, and the long list of partygoers who attended Escobar's lavish parties. But after Escobar's empire came crumbling down, the mansion on La Isla Grande was claimed by the government, and it has gradually fallen into disrepair as nature reclaims the territories. The perfectly manicured garden is now home to a family of giant wild pigs, and the main mansion, which was ornately decorated with white tile and marble, now features cracked walls with faded color schemes. The oversized swimming pool, which was an eye-catching sight back in the buzzing days of La Isla Grande, has transformed into a dark, hollow hole in the ground. Beyond the ghostly structures of ages past that dominate the island, though, La Isla Grande still maintains its beauty with lusciously green mountains, dreamy blue waters, and an eerie air of mystery that still pervades the atmosphere decades after the sound of activities has vanished. Amado Carrillo Fuentes Mexico Mansion. This sprawling $4.5 million mansion, located in Jardines del Pedregal, a highly exclusive neighborhood in Mexico, used to be home to one of the country's most dangerous criminals. He was known by many names: Lord of the Skies, El Señor de los Cielos, or simply as Amado Carrillo Fuentes, and as the head of the Juarez cartel. His history of criminal activities and violence shook Mexico to its core. In this two-story, 10,000-square-foot mansion, Carrillo held high-profile meetings, illegal business deals, and allegedly many lost heads within these walls. The mansion itself was built to taste, featuring an indoor pool, expansive gardens, a bar with a wine cellar, 6 lavishly decorated bedrooms, and enough garage space to house up to 30 cars. There are also 6 jacuzzis, numerous closets and dressing rooms, as well as a huge kitchen capable of catering to the horde of people that lived here. Then you have the steam room, a library, and even a life-size playhouse for children. However, in January 1995, 2 years before the drug kingpin died, his gigantic ghost mansion was seized by the Mexican government. Before his death, Carrillo was wanted in several countries, including Argentina, Colombia, the United States, and even his home country of Mexico. And in a bid to escape from the long arms of the law, he decided to undergo several cosmetic procedures to alter his appearance and render him unrecognizable to the authorities. It was during one of these procedures in 1997 that Carrillo would eventually lose his life after the surgery went south all of a sudden. Since then, This narco mansion has served as the headquarters of a foundation that trains unemployed and disabled Mexicans so they can find work, and has also been rented for a couple of Hollywood blockbusters like the 2003 action thriller Man on Fire. After the Mexican government got tired of the expensive maintenance cost, which included a whopping $25,000 just for security services, they decided to hawk it off as a lottery prize in 2022. And for just $10, a lucky winner finally took ownership of the abandoned property. John Gotti's abandoned mansion. In the heart of Old Westbury, Long Island, sits a ghostly abandoned mansion owned by one of the most dangerous figures to ever emerge out of the Gambino crime family, John Gotti. Before he was caught by the unforgiving hands of the law, Gotti led what was described as America's most dangerous syndicate, involved in everything from kidnapping to extortion, drug trade, and even human trafficking. This particular mansion stands as a symbol of his affluence, and it remains frozen in time, with many of the family's possessions still inside today. The enthralling Gotti mansion features a main house with dozens of rooms, a pool, a guest house, a massive garage, a horse stable, an overgrown basketball court, a triple-level tub, and a swim-up bar. It was within this very mansion that Gotti's daughter, Victoria, raised her 3 sons, John, Carmine, and Frank. Between 2004 and 2005, 3 seasons of the reality show Growing Up Gotti were shot here, and you can still see the flooring and all the recognizable Gotti fixtures from the show. In 2016, federal agents launched a massive raid on the property, as well as the family's auto parts business for alleged tax frauds involving Victoria's sons, and shortly after that, the family moved out, and it became abandoned. Since then, the mansion has transformed into a shadow of its former self, although it remains private property. Within this building, you will find hundreds of books, along with furniture, family photos, high-end designer clothes, dishes still in the cabinets in the kitchen, old abandoned cars on the lot, and a whole lot more. But the most intriguing part of this Mafia mansion is a secret room disguised as a bookshelf in the guest house. While you might expect such a top-secret section to contain a hoard of treasures or incriminating documents about the Gotti family, it turned out there were only a handful of clothes, suits, DVDs, and other private items left behind. But that's not the only secret locked away here. Left behind in one of the rooms are 2 safes, untouched and unopened since the goddess walked out of the mansion and never looked back. However, it's impossible to tell whether they're empty or filled with valuable documents, jewelry, or even a stack of cash. There are also several couches, leather chairs, television sets, and even an artwork left behind in one of the bathrooms, as well as tons of private family items the Gottis didn't bother to take along. Once a hub of activities, this 7,000-square-foot estate now sits quietly in the hidden corners of New York, preserving the history and legacy of America's most prolific crime family. Al Capone's Miami estate. Notorious gangster and mafia boss Al Capone bought this 7,500-square-foot mansion in Palm Island, Miami Beach, back in 1928 for just $40,000, and transformed it into a home fit for a king. It was in this same house that Al Capone would later die from a heart attack in 1947 at the age of 48. Built in a Spanish colonial style, this 7-bedroom, 7-bathroom mansion offers a view of Biscayne Bay, an exclusive private beach, a gatehouse, and the largest pool in all of Florida. The mansion was originally built in 1922 by brewing magnate Clarence Bush before it was eventually acquired by the notorious Prohibition-era gangster. Before he landed in Alcatraz, Al Capone threw several lavish parties at this mansion, attended by some of the most powerful men of the underworld. However, 5 years after Al Capone's death, his wife May sold it in 1952, and then it changed hands again in 2021 for $15.5 million. Not long after it was finally acquired, the mansion was thrust into the middle of a brutal legal battle between the new owners who wanted to tear it down and preservationists who believed it held historical significance and should be preserved. This wasn't surprising since Al Capone's estate was one of the most luxurious and abandoned Mafia Capo mansions in the world. To keep the building standing, the locals put together a petition that received some 26,000 signatures. Unfortunately, though, when the matter made it to court, the historic value of the mansion was called into question, and many on the other side of the spectrum were troubled by the notion of celebrating a mobster once known as public enemy number one. While the movement enjoyed initial success, the Claremont family who owned the property doubled down on their efforts, eventually receiving a demolition permit from the city of Miami Beach in July 2023. After a whole lot of back and forth, the whole building was eventually reduced to rubble, and the land was listed on the market for $31 million. La Manuela Mansion. Nestled in a remote coastal resort in Guatapé, Colombia, is another abandoned mansion also owned by drug kingpin Pablo Escobar. Famously known as the La Manuela, this massive edifice is situated next to a man-made lake popular with the locals, and it served as a trusted hiding place for the Colombian drug lord during his time on the throne. However, what makes this particular mansion stand out is the fact that it was built for the sole purpose of storing cash and cocaine within its walls. As one of Colombia's most dangerous drug lords, and perhaps the richest gang boss the world has ever seen, Escobar controlled a large portion of the hard drugs transported around the world, which also brought in a lot of cash that needed to be stored discreetly. Since this wasn't clean money, he couldn't just take it to the bank, so he decided to construct this huge mansion with double-layered walls, providing enough space to hide huge amounts of illegal cash as well as some hard drugs. Strangely enough, Escobar named the safe house after his young daughter Manuela, and to convince the public that this was just another rich man's mansion, he added some extra features like a tennis court, standard football pitch, helipad, horse stables, and even a motorcycle track. Of course, such a location would need the heaviest security possible, so Escobar assigned his most elite team of armed security forces to keep a watchful eye over the activities in and around the mansion. To ensure that no one was snooping around and getting into his business, Escobar bought more than 20 acres surrounding the villa, so he could practically hide in plain sight. But this facade wouldn't last forever, as in 1993, a vigilante group called the Los Pepes, or People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar, launched a brutal bombing attack on the villa. After sneaking 220 kilograms of TNT into one of the bathrooms, the entire residence was blown to smithereens, and months later, Escobar himself was gunned down in a bloody shootout. Decades after this, all that's left of La Manuela is a shell of the luxurious building, now overgrown with vegetation. But despite the widespread desolation, La Manuela has recently become a popular destination for thrill-seekers looking to explore the ruins of one of Escobar's mansions, even though it's heavily guarded by Colombian forces. What remains of the shell has also been badly defaced and covered in graffiti. The massive pool has become too toxic to swim in, and the villa's golden days have now been relegated to distant memory. Now it's time for our subscribers' pick. As we examine some of the most luxurious and abandoned Mafia Capo mansions in the world, we can't help but wonder why some of them end up selling for as low as $10. Oftentimes, when these properties hit the market, they rarely pique the interest of the general public, perhaps due to their ties with brutal gangsters and bloodthirsty drug leaders, or out of fear of being attacked by loyalists and followers of these gang bosses. Even at times when these mansions are given away as lottery prizes, the aftermath is always hidden from the general public, and no one knows what happens to the properties after they're handed over to their new owners. Do you think people really move into these old mansions? Would you love to own a property previously occupied by a drug lord? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Now, let's get back to the video. El Tucan's Mansion. In the remote Mexican town of Antunez, a two-story dwelling lay deserted, now only occupied by a handful of vigilantes who have taken up arms to protect their community against a drug lord known as Efrain Isaac Rosales, or El Tucan. This grand mansion stands in stark contrast to the surrounding buildings, with its bright yellow walls, white accents, double-paned windows, and red tile roof. On the outside, you will find a large yard with fresh-cut lawn, palm trees, and a circular pool, telltale signs that whoever used to live here was wealthy compared to the rest of the residents. El Tucan, the man who owns the property, was a lieutenant under the leadership of drug lord Servando Gomez, also known as La Tuta, a former school teacher who became the head of a Mexican cartel known as the Knights Templar. This criminal gang has been recognized as one of the most dangerous groups in Mexico, with roots across several Mexican towns, where they rule with intimidation, violence, and an unending stream of bloodshed. But the hunter would eventually become the hunted after a group of volunteer warriors from the town banded together to expel the cartel from their territory. Armed to the teeth, these vigilantes planned and executed several successful attacks against the Knight Templars, including a very eventful one on January 10, 2014, when they marched on El Tucan's mansion in the middle of the town, arms drawn and ready for war. But as the roars of war echoed closer and closer, El Tucan decided to make a run from it, leaving almost everything he owned, including his weapons. What used to be a luxurious mansion, home to El Tucan and his family, was transformed into a barrack for the vigilante group, who have ransacked the house, looting anything of value, from large flat-screen televisions to pieces of furniture and even clothing items. But this isn't the only El Tucan property the vigilantes occupied. Close by, the drug lord also owned a ranch called La Ilusión, or the Illusion, surrounded by grapefruit trees and hundreds of hectares of avocado trees, which has since been claimed and plundered by the vigilantes. In addition to these properties, the group also confiscated some vehicles left at the property, including a white Dodge Ram pickup truck and a bullet-ridden modified truck, with half-inch steel plates and steel portals. While this brave act by the vigilantes received positive accolades from the members of their communities, others believe the group sometimes employed excessive force, and they could someday grow to become the very demons they swore to fight. Jenley Yeon's Cash Mansion. Back in 2007, Mexican forces made the largest bust in the nation's history, after they recovered over $205 million in cash hidden in the Mexican mansion of suspected drug trafficker Jenley Yeon. Located in the upper-crust neighborhood of Las Lomas, Chapultepec in Mexico City, this huge property sits on a 0.3-acre lot. The mansion itself is a 16,748 square foot house, featuring a pool with a skylight, a spa, an elevator, and a large upstairs party room. Inside this ultra-luxurious mansion, you'll also find several spacious rooms and gigantic bathrooms, a jacuzzi, and a restaurant-standard kitchen fit for a chef. This three-story structure is tastefully decorated with expensive chandeliers and a lavish stairwell, and was valued at around $5 million. Jenley had initially attempted to flee the country to the United States, but was soon caught and extradited to Mexico to answer for his crimes. As soon as he was caught, Jenley decided to spin his own version of the story. He claimed that the money wasn't gotten from the illegal drug trade, but actually belonged to the ruling National Action Party, and was supposed to finance the electoral campaign of President Felipe Calderón. But that story didn't fly, and Jenley was thrown in prison. In addition to these money laundering charges, the Shanghai-born Jenley was also suspected of importing substances used in the production of synthetic drugs and conspiring with the Sinaloa cartel. During this period, his mansion not only became a regular meeting place, but also used to store ill-gotten cash. As soon as the stash of cash was discovered, the luxurious mansion was also seized by the Mexican authorities, along with other properties belonging to the suspected drug trafficker. 12 years later, in 2019, the Mexican government announced that they would be auctioning off the villa as part of a larger auction involving 25 different assets seized from drug kingpins and corrupt politicians, totaling about 234 million Mexican pesos. According to the Mexican president, proceeds from Jenley's house and others would go to the underserved communities across Mexico, providing access to education, basic amenities, and scholarship opportunities for the Mexican youths. Alexander Fiola's mansion, locked away in the quiet outskirts of New York City, is an abandoned $8 million mansion owned by Mafia boss Alexander Fiola and his wife. What was once a symbol of affluence and opulence has since been lying in dust and falling apart by the day. Fiola had acquired the wealth to build this 19,000 square foot estate by embezzling millions from the New York City transportation system, but while the whole scheme started as a quiet scam, it soon turned violent after people started to disappear mysteriously by Fiola's command. Stepping through the grand entrance of this massive mansion, you'll be immersed in an expansive living room with soaring ceilings and intricate designs, reminiscent of a time when the property hosted lavish parties and extravagant gatherings of some of the city's most powerful men. However, unlike in those days, the furniture was noticeably absent, and echoes could be heard from one corner of the properties to another. Some little touches still exist within the walls of the villa. A framed photo of a Mafia family adorns the walls, and their little extra touches can still be seen from the dining rooms to the many bedrooms in the house. But even though the property has been abandoned for a while, some parts still maintain their former glory, like the intricately carved pillars or the ornate fireplaces, which exude both sophistication and elegance. A couple of hidden compartments can also be seen here and there, used by the couple to hide their cash, jewelry, and even armor-piercing bullets, all indicative of the lifestyle choices of the people who used to live here. The upper floors offer a view of faded splendor, a tastefully decorated master bedroom falling into disrepair, grand fireplaces showing signs of abandonment, remnants of a home theater where laughter and amusement used to echo, and personal belongings scattered among the ruins. The pool also lays silent, its waters no longer inviting, and as you descend into the basements, you uncover a whole new world entirely. Office spaces, entertainment rooms, and even a state-of-the-art security system have all fallen into decay over time. While the fate of the landlords remains unknown, the mansion stands as a symbol of their legacy. Although several promises of renovations have been made over the years, none has ever come to pass. And only time will tell if this mansion will rise from the ashes and reclaim its former glory. El Chapo's safe house. From breaking out of prison twice to building some of the craziest escape routes into his many mansions, El Chapo solidified his position as one of the most dangerous and cunning drug lords of this era. One of his most famous feats was when he slipped away through a secret tunnel hidden under his bathtub, while Mexican Marines were still trying to break his door down in 2014. This same house, where he performed his magical escape acts, was part of the 20 El Chapo properties impounded by the Mexican government. For years, authorities have attempted to flip the property by auctioning it off to the highest bidder. But when that failed, they chose the lottery option, which has proven effective in many cases. The property in question, however, isn't exactly a luxurious mansion, but an old, unassuming 2,800 square feet home located in a quiet neighborhood in Culiacan, the home base of the Sinaloa cartel. Since February 2014, when El Chapo Guzman slipped away from the grips of the authorities, the $183,000 property has been sitting empty and devoid of life. A bare-walled bungalow with low ceilings and bars on the windows, the property is situated across the road from a school and surrounded by a tall metal fence, shielding it from intruders. The Institute to Return Stolen Goods to the People, or INDEP, an agency responsible for maintaining such kinds of buildings, has also stripped El Chapo's former hideout of the security cameras watching every corner of the surrounding area and given the bungalow a fresh coat of paint. Surprisingly, many of the people who live around the house have no idea who even owns it. So when the authorities put it out as a lottery prize for just $9 per ticket, a lot of people showed interest, oblivious of its history. The former safe house has since been donated to a lucky member of the community, although the lottery winner's identity remains undisclosed, possibly for safety reasons. Henda Napes. Before Pablo Escobar went on the run, he bought an expansive property 93 miles east of Medellin, Colombia, in a town called Puerto Triunfo. Measuring about 7.7 miles, this property was more than a simple mansion, with features like a sculpture garden, an airport, several swimming pools, perfectly manicured lawns, man-made lakes, and even a private zoo. But even though this was meant to be a luxurious retreat for the kingpin and his family and friends, it was so much more than that. This was the property Escobar lavished millions on to showcase his immense wealth. Car collections, bikes, even a racetrack for his go-karts. While the property served him well back in the day, it has gradually fallen into ruin and is gradually being reclaimed by nature. Situated on the main entrance is Escobar's biggest pride, a replica of his Piper PA-18 Super Cub airplane, with which he transported his first shipment of hard drugs to the United States, kickstarting one of the most prominent drug empires the world has ever seen. But as soon as Escobar was killed by the Colombian police in 1993, the government and Escobar's family found themselves in a standoff concerning the ownership of the Henda Napes. After a serious legal battle, the government eventually took over the land. However, they soon had their hands full, especially with the exotic and wild animals Escobar kept in the private zoo. While some were easily released into the wild or relocated to nearby zoos, authorities couldn't handle Escobar's favorite pets, his 4 hippos. Unfortunately, before they could solve this problem once and for all, the hippos escaped and started breeding and multiplying, creating an even bigger problem. As of today, at least 100 of these hippos currently live within and outside the area of Henda Napes, and their continued existence exposes the people living around the resort and their farms to serious threats of attacks, one which the authorities may not be able to do anything about. The property itself has become a ghost of times past. The wall paintings are fading, the massive pool is now nothing but a shallow pit, the luxurious rooms have now been taken over by pests, and even though Escobar's family attempted to transform it into a museum, the government wasn't having it and they shut it down. The luxurious property currently sits in a dilapidated state, and it will likely remain so until the authorities finally decide to pull it down and construct a new and more noble structure on the plot. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.